Northbound Veterans Memorial. Stop and go from Boughton to the Reagan Tollway. That's traffic. I'm Jim Palamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center. Morning flurries possible. Watch for some freezing drizzle on the ride home today. High 34. Cloudy with a flurry, 27 overnight. 32 right now. Next news at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Retire Chicago. Tune in Saturday mornings at 8 to Retire Chicago with John McNamara of McNamara Capital.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. The issue of should he or shouldn't he, should John Bolton, well, there's two should he or should he not with respect to John Bolton. One is a decision for the Senate, should he testify. Another is a decision for John Bolton. Should he say something publicly, issue some sort of public statement about whether or not he has information material to this proceeding, now that he knows he has become even more of a political football than he was prior to the start of the impeachment trial. I guess the third, per his former chief of staff, Fred Fleitz, is should he or should he not withdraw this manuscript that he sent to the NSC for security review to pursue the publication of his book in the spring.
Yeah, yank the book.
So
wait till after the November 2020 election and then publish it.
With respect to the decision for the Senate, I thought Alan Dershowitz handled it relatively nicely during his time at the wheel yesterday, talking about this abuse of power charge and giving a hypothetical before turning to the actual being the story that broke over the weekend about Bolton's alleged assertions in his manuscript.
Even if a president, any president, were to demand a quid pro quo as a condition to sending aid to a foreign country, obviously a highly disputed matter in this case, that would not by itself constitute an abuse of power. Consider the following hypothetical case that is in our news today as the Israeli Prime Minister comes to the United States for meetings. Let's assume a Democratic president tells Israel that foreign aid authorized by Congress will not be sent or an Oval Office meeting will not be scheduled unless the Israelis stop building settlements. Quid pro quo. I might disapprove of such a quid pro quo demand on policy grounds, but it would not constitute an abuse of power. Quid pro quo alone is not a basis for abuse of power. It's part of the way foreign policy has been operated by presidents since the beginning of time. It follows from this that if a president, any president, were to have done what the Times reported about the content of the Bolton manuscript, that would not constitute an impeachable offense. Let me repeat, nothing in the Bolton revelations, even if true, would rise to the level of an abuse of power or an impeachable offense. That is clear from the history. That is clear from the language of the Constitution. You cannot turn conduct that is not impeachable into impeachable conduct simply by using words like quid pro quo and personal benefit.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Fred Fleitz, who served as Chief of Staff to John Bolton in 2 stints during his career, including at the National Security Council in 2018. He is now the President and CEO for the Center for Security Policy. Fred, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So, you penned this piece in Fox for Fox News that calls on your old boss to withdraw his manuscript, pull that back, but sort of the bullet's out of the gun, at least as far as the politics is concerned, even if he were to pull it back. What about what the Wall Street Journal argues, that he should make some sort of public statement on the matter to indicate whether or not he really has anything that is material and non-redundant to the process?
Well, I don't think that anything we've seen from the book so far, and of course we don't know what's in the book. These were anonymous sources to the New York Times, so what we've heard might not be true or might be exaggerated. From what I can tell, these statements by Bolton in the book are nothing new, nothing that we don't already know. The more important principle, I think, is that presidents have to be able to candidly and confidentially confide and consult their trusted advisors with the knowledge that those consultations will not be leaked to the media or be published in a book. And if that principle isn't upheld, presidents are going to be afraid to speak to the most talented experts on very sensitive subjects, and that's dangerous for our country. So I think to defend that principle, Ambassador Bolton should withdraw his book and not publish it before the election this November. And I wrote in the book that that's a principle that Bob Gates made. He resigned as Secretary of Defense in 2011, but he withheld his memoirs until 2014. They were very critical of the Obama administration because he did not want his book to have any effect on the 2012 presidential election.
Do you think that he's doing this, though, because he's bitter that the relationship didn't work out between him and President Trump?
John Bolton's a principled man. I don't think he would write a book for that reason. I think he has something he thinks he needs to say, and I respect that. But I believe he needs to reconsider, given the importance of protecting this principle of ensuring that the president can consult in confidence with his advisors without worried about those consultations being published.
As somebody who knows him for 30 years like you do and worked for him when he was at NSC, when he was National Security Advisor, is there any indication you have that he believes that there was criminal wrongdoing or wrongdoing that rose to the level of an impeachable offense, or was it just a matter of serious policy disagreements and on various geopolitical matters?
I haven't discussed the subject with him.
All right. So,
are you going to? When was the last time you spoke to him?
I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah. So with respect to giving your sense of Biden, we talked to Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano on the show yesterday, who also knows John, and
good friend of mine.
Yeah, and he and we had Ambassador Bolton on the show a million times before he became National Security Advisor. We always got on with him well.
He was a weekly guest.
I'm not as interventionist as he is, but we always had good discussions. He's obviously a very sharp mind and very straightforward, so he was a great guest, as Amy said. But Carafano said, and that's my sense of it too, look, if John Bolton's a patriot, if he thought that there was something that needed to be said, he wouldn't wait for the machinations of the House. He wouldn't wait for the decision in the Senate. He would come forward if he thought that he had information of criminal conduct at the highest reaches of government. Is that your sense of John Bolton too?
Yes, I think that's right. If he thought there was something urgent, I don't think he'd be silent.
And so with respect to this book, then, how do you, and with respect to what you said about why the timing of this book is wrong, how do you reconcile or assess the decision that was made to send this over to NSC at the end of last month?
I believe he still thinks he needs to get this message out soon. I don't think that it was so urgent that he had to go to Congress to discuss what he had in mind. I'm concerned that it was sent to the National Security Council in the middle of the impeachment hearing, given how leak-prone the NSC is. And reports that came out yesterday that multiple paper copies were made in the NSC, which probably led to this manuscript being leaked. If I had advised Ambassador Bolton on this, I would have told him, if you're going to do it, don't do it during the impeachment process, because the politics in Washington are just red hot, and there's going to be some bureaucrat who will not be able to resist the temptation to leak this. I think that's probably what happened.
Well, how do you defend your friend? Tucker Carlson last night called him a snake. You had Rush Limbaugh attacking him yesterday as well. And what do you want to say to the haters out there?
I'm really sorry that Tucker Carlson continues this insane series of attacks on Ambassador Bolton. I think they're incredibly unfair, and a lot of it is a misrepresentation of John's record. John is not a neocon. He did not get us into the Iraq War. I know Tucker Carlson won't admit that. I worked for John at the State Department when he was Undersecretary of State for Arms Control. Colin Powell kept him out completely of all decision-making on the Iraq War. Not that John didn't favor it. He had no impact on us going to war with Iraq. And I know that's sacrilege among the Tucker Carlson set. But I think Tucker needs to reconsider these attacks on a fellow Republican. I'm a little fed up with Tucker on that.
Mm-hmm. With respect to your time in the Trump administration, what was your experience when it came to these important discussions about policy with respect to Russia or Turkey and Syria, the full gamut?
I enjoyed being in the Trump administration very much, and I hated leaving the NSC. I just I got a better offer, but I spoke to Chief of Staff Kelly and Ambassador Bolton. They thought it was better for the president that I move on to a position where I could continue my writing and media work. But I was involved in all kinds of national security questions in Iran and North Korea and Syria, and we were doing a lot of good. We did a lot of good on the counterterrorism strategy, getting the U.S. out of the nuclear deal with Iran. I think we achieved a lot in North Korea. I know that we haven't gotten as far as the president had hoped, but I think the situation is considerably better than under the Obama administration. I see a lot of potential for continuing to promote our national security in a second Trump term.
And did you see anything or experience anything during your time that was troubling to you, that wasn't, forgetting sort of the rhetorical style, that wasn't sort of customary foreign policy, national security decision-making as it pertains to American interests?
I think there's no question that Trump's approach to national security is unorthodox. He does things completely different from other presidents. He's thrown out the national security rule book. He doesn't go by traditional diplomatic conventions. I think a lot of that has been a breath of fresh air. It's led to some awkward moments at times, but the American people voted it in because they were tired of the foreign policy establishment. And I think on balance, it's been a good move.
And nothing that you would say this is somebody who is putting his interests ahead of America's interests?
No, I've never seen that. And I think if people are going to make that allegation, I'd like to see solid evidence.
That seems fair. We're still waiting for solid evidence of that, and we're nearing the end of opening arguments which could end up being closing arguments. We'll see with respect to the impeachment trial. He is Fred Fleitz. He's President and CEO, Center for Security Policy, former Chief of Staff to Ambassador John Bolton. Fred, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Message and data rates may apply. Individual